Welcome back, everybody. It's so good to be here. I'm sitting here with a young man that every time I look at him, I think, God, thank you for letting me play when I played. He's another reason I would not want to be playing today. Please welcome Cam Heyward.
How we doing? You're being nice to me right now. Being very nice.
Okay, I got reasons, but we'll get into that in a moment. Cam, I look at a football team. Look at a locker room. You know, it's often said you got adders, subtractors, multipliers, dividers, and they all make up the essence of a locker room. But I've also heard about how a career of a football player can be described basically in 3 or 4 stages. One, you have the cowboy stage, a little wild and woolly, a little undisciplined, you know. Then you have the knight sort of stage, still got a lot of fight left in them, but a little more disciplined. Few of us rise to that king level where you start to really dominate the opposition and those around you, you're a dominant figure in it. And then you have the sage stage where you see that dominant figure. Maybe he doesn't have all the physical attributes, but he reaches out to uplift the others around him. And I watch that and I think, in my mind, that really describes a lot of what I've seen in your career. I've been fortunate enough to watch this young man grow from the rookie that came in. And I'll just leave this real briefly, but you were pretty wild and woolly when you came in.
I was the cowboy.
You were, oh, you were a cowboy, were you not?
Yes.
You know, we're watching this young guy. He comes, you know, he's from Ohio State. He comes into camp, and in the first week, he fights every offensive lineman in camp. And I said to Chaluch, to Tunch, right? I says, Chaluch, you better buckle up because after he finishes with all the active guys, he might come after the retired guys.
Well, it's funny because, you know, Coach T has this rule, 7 will get you 10. You know, if you hold somebody or if you bull rush, you're going to fight. And I bull rushed, so everybody wanted to fight me. But Coach Mitch had told me, John Mitchell, great coach, he had told me, don't fight. So after the first practice, everybody's telling me, you gotta fight. Then once Coach Mitch told me that, I had to fight. I just needed to be released, and you know, Coach Mitch gave me the go-ahead, and from then on, I fought for my next 4 years, and then after that, I kept fighting, and then, you know, Mike T's probably telling me not to fight now.
Now, were you always such a wild and woolly dude? You know, kind of take me back a little bit. Describe your first. Okay,
I've been passionate. You know, whenever I put my heart into something, I put 110% into it. My family, my marriage, and then when I play football, I can't go 50%. That's in practice, that's in, you know, games. You know, Coach T has tried to help me out, help me get out of practice, but we're still battling that now.
You know, the problem is you're more of an 80s throwback guy than you are in this day and age. And I always say that because back then, well, you know, it was a different time. The double sessions, the Oklahoma, you know, hamburger drills, they were a lot more prevalent. But the game has changed. But, you know, as I said, you came in as that wild and woolly guy, but also I saw you grow in discipline. Mm-hmm. Was there some people that started to speak into your life, into your playing life, about discipline?
Well, I think, you know, for me personally, I always had a pressure of when you're drafted to the Steelers, there's a, you know, tradition that goes along with it, and you want to uphold that tradition. And so for me, when I first got here, you know, I want to start. I want to be part of this great team. But one thing I learned early was to listen, and that, you know, there's so much information you can learn and so much you can take from people. And so when I wasn't playing, I would get frustrated, but learning from those guys was huge for me. And I would have these, you know, talks with my mom and talks with, you know, people who weren't part of the Steelers. And I was just like, you know, I have to be ready for my moment, but to be ready for my moment, you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to understand what you're doing wrong before then. And, you know, you're only gonna get one shot once you're called in. So you gotta be willing to, you know, be ready for that moment.
As you increased in your self-discipline, as you matured as a player, did you see that reflected in your private life? As for instance, a husband, then becoming a father, the processes that you went through?
I think the thing I learned the most in my marriage was I don't have to be right. And I'm still learning.
I got news for you. We're never right.
Right.
I'm married to a woman that can remember things that haven't happened yet, okay?
Yeah. And I'm married to Ohio State Buckeye. She played volleyball, and we're very competitive. And competitive relationships don't always, mesh. But, understanding I have to put my ego aside and I have to do what's best for us rather than me. And I've tried to apply that to my family now, my kids. When you're growing up and, it's always, I got to do this for me. I got to be ready to go. I got to think what's best for me. And as you learn and as you have a family, your wife becomes, what's best for her.
Now, this is going to be replayed, okay?
Yes,
so
I love you. I love you.
We're just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. Well, she won't see it tonight, so I got a little bit of time. But, we've learned to work through our problems, and be open and communicate. As a young guy, you can be sort of, I'll stay back, I'll keep to myself. Usually that winds up being the wrong way. You end up, bursting and explosive, but, we've been very open, and I think it's benefited us a lot.
That's excellent, and I appreciate your little bit of insight there. It was funny because back in my day, some of the guys, they actively reached out. I'd take a moment. I remember when my dad passed away after I think it was my third year in the league, and Donnie Shell took me aside, prayed with me and for me. And it was an active movement by Donnie to seek me out and do something like that. I remember when I went through a period of time in my career where I had successive injuries kind of happen. I remember the great Mel Blount, even when he was retired but was visiting, down at practice, just came and sat with me and prayed with me, just uplifted me, talked. Where there's some guys that maybe sought you out rather than you seeking them out, who, because of maybe their spiritual background, like Donnie and Mel, but kind of would speak to your life, reach out to you, and try to lift you up.
I feel like I've had a lot of those people in my life.
You're probably going to get asked this with Kent and everybody else, with Mike T. But
when I look back at to give back in outreach, I think was huge for me. I got to experience guys like Brett Kiesel, Aaron Smith, with his son, and organizing that for Elijah, Troy Polamalu. Those three guys, I understood what it meant to be, a man of the community, a man that gave back. Troy, it was funny. We had this relationship where, he was always kidding around all the time. One of his favorite jokes was to tell me, you want to hear a good joke? And he'd say, Cam Heyward. And so, Troy was always good at kidding around, but the way he would give back, and the way he would interact with so many different people, I think that was huge for me because I came from, my dad playing in the league, but to see a guy like that give back and still be at the top of his career was just unbelievable.
It's funny because, again, you look through those stages as you rose through them. You go from that cowboy, you go to that knight, a little more disciplined, got enough fight, but the king, you became, there's only one other defensive tackle in the history of the Steelers that's a two-time All-Pro like you, and that was Joe Green. And I know there's a lot of comparisons, and I know you're always going, don't say that, okay? I understand. All right, there was only one Joe Green, but I got a feeling that in a number of years they're going to say there's only one Cam Heyward too. And the thing about it is it's a beautiful ascension because from the kind of undisciplined, wild and woolly guy of years ago, what is it now, 10 years ago, going on 11, okay? You rose to, there's a kingship that happens. And what's interesting to me and what I enjoy watching your effect on the guys around you. Now, you got to speak to that a little bit so everybody understands, but there is that time, that moment when the people around you, they're all looking with questions at a certain point in the game. And there comes that time where you've got to kind of uplift those around, and it's not just the kingship, but then the sage that has to come in, because you've got to reach out to the others to bring everybody aboard.
Yeah, one thing I've learned, and I've heard a lot here today, is about planting that seed, right? And I think you go back, you can't live in that moment without things happening around it. And so let's say we're in the third quarter and, or the fourth quarter, and it's a tie ball game and we need a stop. What is my relationship with that person that led to that? And for me, I use times like the off season to get to know guys, and whether it's me being tough on them and being a jerk, but then there's times where just pulling you aside, getting to know you, using those times to remind them of what they've done. You can't just be the bad guy all the time. Right. I am the bad guy 75% of the time, but 25% of the time, I like to be the good guy. But I like to cultivate those relationships. That way I can count on you later on down the road. And I think I've had to work on that. I think when you first get in, it's like, oh, I got to be mad at you. You got to do this. You got to do that. But as you get older, you start to say, what have we done? What have we practiced? What have we gone to get to this point? And as we do that, you start to instill that confidence in guys, and they learn to benefit from that. It's not always the loudest room that, the loudest guy in the room that gets the attention of ears. It's the guy that, speaks with confidence, the guy that assures everybody, and, the guy that's able to relay a message that goes a long way.
I'm laughing because as I'm listening to Cam talk, I had a conversation with Terrell Edmonds, the young safety of the Steelers. And I said, Terrell, Tunch and I, we used to have this thing when you made a mistake, you knew Chuck was going to be after you, the great Chuck Noll, right? Now, the question always became, do you go directly to Chuck to acknowledge your mistake, or do you make him come and find you, in the meantime throwing bodies out of the way while he's coming after you? And we always thought, you better just go off and face the music. So I said to Terrell, what's the worst part about making a mistake? I said, is it getting back to Mike T? And he goes, oh, no. He says, you make a mistake on the field, the first thing I got to do is I got to face Big Cam.
We've had times where we're on the sideline and, everybody's got their head down and, someone's made a mistake. And all I see is somebody pop up and go, my bad, I did that. And it's like, okay, you acknowledged it. We got that out of the way. I don't even have to, rip you apart. You're already ready to, take advantage of that and improve on that.
The funny part is I remember we got to interview the great Joe Green, Mean Joe Green, as we like to call him. And I said to Joe, you came in, you were pretty wild and woolly from everything I understood. He, too, went through all the offensive linemen in his first week of camp or so. And I said, and you were noted for some of the undisciplined things. Like one time, he took the ball and took it away from the referee and kicked it up into the stands. And, he walked into the Denver huddle playing the Denver Broncos. And he was honked off at Paul Howard, the guard who he was playing against, who was holding him, who he says he had warned not to hold him. And he punched him out in his own huddle. And Paul Howard crumpled, and all the other Broncos in the huddle went, hey, ref, you going to do something about that? Nobody did anything, right? The fact of the matter is, you look at that and you say, my goodness, at what point do you kind of see it kind of reined in? And I said, give me for instance, when you really felt like, Chuck or somebody reined you in. And he said, his second year in the league, he was going from lunch, goes down to the locker room. He wanted to get his pads because back then we had 2-a-days. Not 1-a-days like you Yins guys do, okay? We had 2-a-days back in the old days. We had 2-a-days. So he's going to take his pads and go up to Bonaventure Hall, where, of course, there's no air conditioning either, or those Tempur-Pedic beds or anything, But just saying, okay? Not that I'm a disgruntled old guy or nothing,
If you want to go back to St. Vincent right now, you go back right now.
So Joe is going to go and take his pads up for the second session, right? Well, the locker room is locked. Well, Joe gets honked off and he kicks the door in. I mean, just kicked it. And those are heavy doors, right? He takes his pads, he goes up to his room, he lays down, and about 5 minutes later, he gets the knock on the door, opens the door, it's Chuck Noll. Chuck says, Joe, that'll be $500. They just turned around. Now, back in the day, 500 clams was a lot. You know what I'm talking about. But the fact is, Joe told me that's the first time somebody'd really like, boom, that's not acceptable. And you have to grow from that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, I've had plenty of moments where I've acted like Joe on the field, but not to that extent where they kick me out of the game. It's, you know, Joe's awesome. But for me, I think, I would say after my rookie year, I had some conversations with Brett Kiesel. You know, you're itching to go after your rookie year. You're like, man, this is my time. And, you know, I remember Brett just talking to me, all right, Rook, you know, you paid your dues. Now what you gonna do? And, you know, me and Brett's relationship was always really cool for me because I always call him my Obi-Wan. You know, he was a guy that guided me, you know, took me under his wing, showed me what to do, showed me not to be a knucklehead all the time. And I still call him to this day. You know, he's just a guy that was a rock for me in a tough space. You know, when you're not playing and you're not able to, you know, show coaches what you want to do out there, it takes a toll on you. And you know, I remember after that year, he was like, "You're not a bust." And I had people tell me that, and when he said that to me, that reassured me, all right, I can still do this. He was just like, you're just waiting your time. Because, you know, John Mitchell is a legendary coach, but he does not care for rookie players at all. He has this saying, I had Casey, Hampton, Aaron Smith, Ziggy Hood, Brett Kiesel, and me and Steve McClendon were in the back. And he goes, I have my playmakers. I got 99, 98, 91. The rest of you better find special teams. And so when he said that, I was like, shoot, I haven't played special teams ever. And so
You're about to.
But, you know, when he reassured me that way, it meant a lot to me. And it let me know that I can still keep working at this, I can still improve. And I tried to emulate, you know, a lot of things he taught me off the field, whether it was being a good husband or, you know, being a good teammate, getting, you know, guys involved. It just, there's a stepping stone that you gotta walk to get there. And, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Absolutely. Now, the thing that I want to highlight, what you're talking about, you had some guys speak life into you. You had some guys encourage you. You had that sort of mentorship from a Johnny Mitchell, a little hard love and that sort of thing. You know, but you've also now, as you've grown in that maturity and that kingship to sage and difference between being a dominant guy to reaching and uplifting others, you've also created the Heyward House. Mm-hmm. And there's something else, too, that I'd like you to tell us about. Craig's Closet, which I just found out about. I think that is so righteously cool.
Yeah.
All right? So take us through that.
So there's a backstory behind Craig's Closet.
Okay.
Well, I'll first talk about Heyward House. We got started in 2015. My mom was always big on us giving back, whether it was around the holidays, doing Special Olympics. You know, as a knucklehead growing up, you just want to enjoy your Christmas, right?
Right.
But our main thing was, you can open your presents, but after that, we're about to go hand out these blankets down to the city. And we would always do that every year. And, you know, years later, my mom had always instilled we have to give back. You know, I was going into my 5th year, I think. And she was like, okay, you got to kind of start getting your foundation together. I'm like, foundation? What do you mean? You know, we got to get you giving back. You know, I got to see all these other people give back, and I got to be a part of it. But what better way for me to do it than to create my foundation, the Heyward House, that deals with underprivileged kids, underprivileged youth, all throughout the Atlanta area and Pittsburgh area. It's been huge. We've got to, you know, have a lot of interactions and relationships with people. For me, relationships mean a lot. I'll tell you one story. We had a birthday club around my birthday, and we just got kids together throughout the city that, you know, don't really get a chance to hang out. And one of the girls didn't was collecting toilet paper in her back pocket. And we weren't sure why. And she was like, well, I have to take it because I don't know when my next time I'm gonna have toilet paper. And it hit me
Wow.
that type of moment could even transpire here. And then we saw another 2 kids, they're hanging out the entire time. And you see them and they say to each other, I haven't seen my brother in a year. So this is the first time I actually get to hang out. And I broke down when I heard that. And we've had those relationships that keep going, but we got to start Craig's Closet, which is near and dear to my heart because it honors my dad. Throughout high school and college, he had 1 suit. And he always wanted to start it, but never got a chance to. But now we are able to partner up with Sports Clips and the greater city of Pittsburgh, where we find suits for young men that need suits for college interviews, job interviews, prom, and it's just taken off. The pandemic kind of let everybody find out what's in their closet, and then they just dropped it off at our doorstep. So we got plenty of clothes, but it's pretty awesome to see how many people have been willing to give.
Cam, just wrapping this up, we're on borrowed time, but the fact is I'm always on borrowed time. But the deal is, but as we go, and you have fathers out here who maybe they can't start a foundation, maybe they can't start a Craig's Closet,
Right.
but they can be an army of one to make a difference in one person's life. How would you encourage a father like that to reach out and affect his community?
Man, volunteering is huge. There are so many opportunities, whether it's with ManUp or with Pastor Glover. There's so many children that need our help. And for someone to tell you that there isn't an opportunity, that's incorrect, and that guy's not trying. I can tell you when I lost my father, those relationships mean the most. And we have a lot of children out there that are yearning for those relationships for you to take a part in.
You know what? Thank you so much. I knew this was going to be cool. Being with you, it's just a great opportunity to share. Thank you so much, Cam. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Wolf.
Thank you.